Well, good morning, everyone. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Melissa Fisher, and a little bit about me. I have a background in property for more years than what I care to imagine, including business, but currently a property developer, investor, and business owner. And today I am joined by the amazing Nicole, who in her own right is incredible in the property space. So I'm very excited to have her on board. She has also stepped into another realm, which I'm excited to explore with her today, and I'm sure she's going to give you a whole heap of insights in regards to that. And relative to property, now off the back of International Women's Day, how exciting is it to be able to follow up with a conversation today around women and property and how that overlays. So welcome, Nicole. Glad to have you on board today.
Thank you, Melissa, for the invitation. It's really lovely to have this opportunity to talk to you.
It always is absolutely amazing to have you around and have conversations with you. They're generally incredible in their own right. Now, just a little bit about you. Can you give us a quick background on you, property, who you are, being a woman in property and an amazing woman in property?
My history in property started, I think, in around 2003. I lived in the UK then, and by profession, I was an optometrist. So I had remarkable serviceability being an optometrist, especially in the UK, where that field is very allied to the medical profession. So I had lots and lots of serviceability, but not so much on the knowledge side. So of course, you considered an astute investor from the point of view that you're making really lots of money, but you're not necessarily having all the knowledge to back you up and to help you make smart decisions. Nevertheless, I was an investor at that stage, but I think my real education and real discernment in property began when I came to Australia and I joined the I Love Real Estate group. And, that's how you and I met all those years ago. Mm-hmm. For me, it was phenomenal to be educated in doing things the right way. I'm very much one of those people who like learning and having a structure or proven framework to work with. I'm not naturally an entrepreneur. And also, I'm not naturally a business person either. So for me, having that framework and structure was super important. But interestingly enough, even having the knowledge and even having the know-how of being able to create a successful portfolio, one of the biggest things that held me back was my beliefs about myself as a professional stepping into a realm that she didn't know much about, as well as being a, not only a professional, but also mother, and having to juggle all the other priorities that come with being a mum, a wife, and of course, a homeowner, etc., on the magical but very stormy Sunshine Coast. So I had a lot of stuff to deal with in being able to overcome all of that so that I could really get on with the doing and create the property portfolio to replace not only my income, but part of my husband's really significant income as he was doing fly in, fly out work on the mines all around Australia, as well as internationally. So that's what actually made me feel passionate about personal development.
That's incredible. It's something that we want to touch off on today. So just a couple of things that I want to go over is stereotyping in the industry. Does it exist? Right? And how does that exist within the industry? Also, let's give some consideration to women's inherent values and how that overlays in the industry and into specific deals, if there are specifics, or is it generalized where they can jump into any sort of deal and overlay those inherent values that women bring to the table. And then the mindset side of things from a growth perspective and really overcoming that I can't, and the starting position, where do we actually start, and how as a woman do you step into this industry, and at what level? And I don't just want to look at this from a development doing perspective, as let's touch on the professional side of things as well, because we have a lot of amazing women in the industry and often get asked that question of how. So let's start off on the stereotyping. Where do you see that?
Those are all great questions, actually. Fantastic questions. So stereotyping. So I'll give you my personal experience with stereotyping. I've really ignored it. And I've just come in and just delivered as I would usually deliver to anyone and anybody. And so if there was any type of stereotyping, that I was supposed to receive, I didn't receive it.
Yeah.
So it was a choice basically to, no matter what the situation that I was in and who I was dealing with, my values did come in there, because my value is to deliver as much knowledge, as much care, in a way which people perceive to be nurturing and empowering at the same time. That is my purpose, and that is a very core value to me. And I found that people who generally are aware not only of what their values are, and they can actually name them, but also what order those values sit in. So for me, integrity is one of the top values. So whatever I'm delivering is sincere and it's honest. The next thing, of course, is that whatever I'm doing or presenting or teaching or bringing is going to be not only empowering for myself and is going to lead to more and more opportunities for me, but it's always empowering for the other person as well. So there's a true win-win that's brought. Now, if I'm relying on those things and I'm focused on those things, stereotyping is almost a consideration. It's not even relevant, but I am aware of it. I'm aware of it. I choose to ignore it, but I am aware of it. And I think as far as human beings are concerned and the way that our brains are designed, that type of stereotyping is almost a neurological bias. So we're always going to have it in some way, shape, or form. I think there's more awareness around it now, which is why it's being highlighted.
Agree. We were having a quick discussion before about how the tables have turned over time, and the perceived stereotyping. Does it really exist? Is it reactive? Is this from the other side of the table, from the person that is giving consideration to why women belong in the industry or should or shouldn't? What are they actually going through? What is going on for them in preference to, is it a direct attack on women in the industry? And again, where you say you haven't received it, it's interesting to hear comments in a roundabout kind of way and who they come from, in preference to receiving it, in preference to being around it and being a part of it. And we're very privileged, because I say the community that we spend an amount of time in is absolutely incredible. And it's not filled with those sort of situations.
Yeah, you know, I had an experience a few months ago, Melissa, that absolutely brought that home to me. I think the circles that we are really in right now, in the industry that in the country that we're in as well, yeah. It's not, if it is there, it's almost not forefront. I had a real wake-up call a few months ago that showed me that this is not the reality for almost 90% of the world's population as far as women are concerned. I grew up in Africa, and I also grew up in a Portuguese family. Now, this is a generalization, of course, so let's be aware that there is a neurological bias there, that those Latin families are quite paternalistic.
Yep.
And certainly in Africa, the culture is very paternalistic. And so for the reality is, for women in environments, specifically in other countries where the culture is very, very strong and paternalistic, they are going to be really the victims sometimes of this type of stereotyping. What I notice in retaliation is that there's almost a reverse discrimination from people or women who have been the subject of that stereotypical behavior or the victim of that stereotypical behavior, where when they are liberated from it, I'll say, is that the right word? They have almost like a defensive attitude, which is offensive to the males.
Yep.
So it's almost swinging from one side to the other, and that polar extreme almost is for them necessary. But I think in time, what I hope to see, and this is not just on the stereotyping as far as male and female is concerned, this is stereotyping in all sorts of beliefs and realms, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
The sign that is healing is that there is almost a resolution where both sides recognize that there's a middle path that is more collaborative, and it capitalizes on the strengths of each of those positions to make a greater good.
I think you make a very, very good point there. So, and unfortunately, it is something that when you talk stereotyping and biases, yes, and perceptions, how people see each other and ways of being, and certainly who belongs where, It's challenging to think it still exists in this day and age.
Yeah.
Seeing things come a long way, though, to be able to reflect back over the years and see how far it has come, it's still very refreshing, because it could be a whole lot worse. Let's be real about it.
Yeah.
But there's still a long way to go. The collaborative side of things, I still see, and I think I get a lot of joy from it too, being a part of it, but seeing it with other people, male and females working exceptionally well together in that collaborative space and being able to leverage off each other's values.
Yeah.
Because males and females do have very different ways of being, and they do deliver differently and bring different values to the table. And we should be able to be very okay with that. And both male and female, it's not a one-way thing here. Like you've just said, there is that absolute defensive way of being then that I guess is held as a position of, I need to hold this space to be okay with what goes on. So to get to actually understand too, that to let that go is quite a vulnerable space to be in. So you've got to be around the right people that accept and bring that level of acceptance to, we're all just human. There doesn't need to be a one or the other. There needs to be a we are.
Yep.
And an incredible space to work in, to be in that place of, well, what can we deliver?
Absolutely. I agree 100%. I think in the psychological and the personal development world, the stages that go through where, for instance, there's a codependence, which means that the relationship, for instance, and we'll use men and women as an example, is not, it's one knows that they need the other, but they're resentful of that fact. And so what happens is there's one of these parties get very, very resentful and start pushing back, right? And that's called the counter-dependent phase. Now, this happens when we're growing up as well, and you'll see that children go through the same stage. When a baby is a baby, they're very codependent, they need their parents, but then there's a stage in toddlerhood where they start really being defiant. And that's the first sign that the child is developing its own boundaries, and that's called counter-dependence. Now, as they get older, and of course, this also happens for women, men and women, and let us just use the example here of a woman getting out of a relationship where she has been a victim of that type of stereotyping, whether it be at work, personally, whatever, but they become very counter-dependent. And then they start shifting into independence, where they develop their own resources and values to support themselves. But the drive here is that you don't need anyone else.
Yeah.
That's independence. But there's another level above that. Now, in our 20th century society, and it's still hanging over us right now, independence is prized as the thing that everyone aims for. But the level above that is called interdependence. It's the recognition that it doesn't really matter how resourced we are, how developed we are as individuals. We are only capable of so much. But it's when we start collaborating with other resourced, developed individuals who are also independent, and we collaborate, that where we use each other's strengths to build something bigger. The sum of the parts is greater than the individuals in that sum. That's interdependence. And obviously there's going to be bigger things after that. And I'm hoping that we all get there at some stage. But interdependence is, I think, in the personal development, but not only that, the property development side, you're working with your teams, male or female, you are working with their strengths.
And you know what? It's a great lead in to women's inherent values. Yeah. Because again, we don't want to be saying, I need to set that aside for home. You want to be able to be who you are and deliver in your own right with your own values with the people that are very accepting of that, and be able to be every bit as accepting that everyone is there for the same purpose. Let's be real. We're all there for the same end result, achieving the things that we want to achieve that are important to us. And I look at this from a property perspective, because we see it often. There are the levels, the same levels where people are in it for, I just want to make money out of it. I want to change something in my life. I want to be able to create, where they get past that and go, there's more to it. There's a lot more to property and what you can create and what you can do and who you're working with and the overall outcomes that come with that. And when you get to that, it is the level of working together and supporting each other and allowing each other to be each other's resources as well. Because like you've just said, there's only so much as an individual you can bring to the table that you can do, that you can deliver on your own. And why would you want to do it on your own?
It's not as much fun, is it?
No, absolutely not. And we see a lot of it. And I'm very blessed to have amazing teams around me, amazing men and women that we work with at varying different levels. It's an incredible space to play in. But I will also remember day one where it started. And it wasn't like that. There's a lot to go through and a lot to understand to be able to step into a new industry, if that's what it is for people, or to be able to move into different strategies, or even just move further through an industry. And, talking property at the moment, how do women do that without having to let go of all the things that they are for themselves and try and squeeze themselves into a square box? Because we're not about the square box.
No.
So let's look at women's inherent values. So talk about someone coming into the property industry. So this is deal one. They've gone, property's it. I'm going to set my family up. I'm going to start with some property investing. And this is deal one. I have no idea what I'm doing. So I'm going to get educated. I'm going to actually get myself enrolled in some educational courses and attend some events and learn a whole heap of stuff that Dempner teaches. Right. And I'm going to join a great community because that's a great place to start. But let's look at what women are really good at. Inherently mothers. Right. So, and I don't exclude anyone from this, but women have some inherent values that I don't think they realize can be overlaid into the property industry from a standing start.
Okay. So we're talking about general strengths and values that women have.
Yeah.
We are inherently more collaborative.
Yeah.
We are used to working in a community.
Mm.
And we are also more creative. I think from a creative point of view, problem solving, but being open to working with others to get the solutions. We're also more nurturing. So we are not only going to be looking at the most effective solution, we also naturally are able to look at that solution in context of how it's going to be received by others or how it's going to impact others. And that is probably one of the biggest strengths that we have. Now, that doesn't mean that men don't have that. But it's just from the way that women are wired, perhaps we are inherently more open to being collaborative. Yeah, I'm very aware here that I'm generalizing, but it is a strength that we have, and we also.
So the thing is, just off the back of that, Nicole, really interesting, because, and yes, I totally and utterly agree. Okay, so I can throw this into conversations with councils and conversations as teams with, this is a challenge that we're up against and what are the solutions? No, men can come up with great solutions too. Women can generally wrap it differently than what men can and deliver it differently too. And this is not about a who can and who can't scenario, but I look at women going, where do I start? I'm no good at this. I know nothing. I've got nothing to bring to the table. I want to be able to create investment for our future, for our family, for our retirement, for whatever it is, and don't see their own value. Just don't understand that they have those values that they can go, well, hold on. I know I've been so organized as a mum. I've got kids that I got to run around after, a husband that I still look after, a home that I look after. If they haven't been in the workforce, it's very easy to be able to say, I have no value to deliver here. I've got nothing to bring to the table. Whereas these skills that they use on a day-to-day consistently within a family life or mothering, just organizing a household, overlay exceptionally well when you are looking at property right from the onset of the researching and being able to source out the information, the conversations that need to be had.
Absolutely. And they're very good at conversation, asking questions. Yeah.
Yeah, I can, it's quite funny. I hear this little voice over here saying, oh, yes, they are very good at talking. Right?
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
But they are. And property is a people game, isn't it?
Yeah, and Matt's made a very good point there. I wouldn't say that our EI is generally better, but we are more attuned to sensory acuity. So when we're talking to others, we're looking for cues from others to see how they're receiving the information. So we naturally change the way that we deliver, as you were saying before, to be able to be received in a way that's going to inspire more cooperation. So that's what we do. We're great at asking questions as well. And I think we're more open to whatever solutions are presented.
Yeah, definitely. I
Yeah.
totally agree. And just experience sake and how I see things with, thankfully, the teams that I work with, but a lot of people that I'm around is, yes, open to different opportunities, certainly open to giving consideration to, oh, that might work. I'll give that some thought instead of brushing things off. And again, this is not about a men can't do that. I'm talking about women coming into the industry now and how they can use a skill set that they don't even realize that they have.
And I think this is another hallmark, is that we take our skill set as women for granted a lot. We take it for granted.
Yeah, we do.
And
we don't
just take it as normal, as expected, and we don't actually see them as strengths and skills. For instance, the fact that women generally are better at multitasking. I think there is a certain level of multitasking which is helpful, and focus is really a very big thing that is purported to be a part of success. But women are able to hold multiple priorities in their space and be able to give equal energy to those priorities, such as family, children, household, plus their work, plus their investment endeavors. That's just 4 of the priorities that they're able to juggle at one time. And they find, if they are working effectively, that they're able to keep all of those balls in the air without letting one drop. But
segmenting and focus are a very big factor when it comes into being able to do that, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think, again, it's just one of those things that, no, you did right. Women don't see it as a strength. And it's just an expectation that that's how you operate. Yeah. And if you look at coming into an industry, and what do you need to be able to do to succeed in this industry, you need to be able to be exactly who you are and operate exactly how you operate, because that's incredible on a day-to-day, and learn the information. Because the information, the knowledge, the education is there, but you need to be able to see yourself how you can produce value in the role that you're about to undertake, and whether that's investment or development or whatever it is. You may be getting re-educated and coming in as a professional at a different level. Women have got a lot of value to deliver. How about resilience?
Resilience is absolutely key. I just had a thought while you were talking there, and it really made me think of something that I experienced having been a real expert in my field in optometry before. I was really a master at what I did, and I really enjoyed it and I was really good at it. Now, coming into a field that I didn't know about, I felt completely out of my depth. It really pushed all my buttons. Yeah. When you ask the question around, what is it when you are looking at creating the first deal, sitting there with you're acquiring a lot of information at one time, what is it that allows you to do the doing? There's a certain amount of empowerment that's necessary. And for me, the shift really came, the empowering shift came when I acknowledged my own vulnerability. And that meant that when the very first call to a commercial real estate agent who I was really quite intimidated by, just the thought of calling this person who is an expert in their field when I'm clearly not. How do you have that conversation? And what I did right out from the outset is I produced that integrity, and I said, actually, I'm calling you, I'm just starting out, and to be absolutely honest, I know that I don't know the first thing, and this is why I'm calling you. And just having that vulnerability just meant that the whole conversation changed. And I was able to bring the best out of that person because I acknowledged their expertise and I acknowledged that I was not an expert. And then I was just open to taking any feedback or any answers they gave me, really receiving it with gratitude. Yeah. And that was the hallmark of everything I did after that, because it worked so well the first time, letting go of that expectation that I needed to know.
Yes. That is an incredible point that you make. Being able to validate someone else and their expertise, their experience, and what they bring to the table, and being okay with your starting position. Really interesting. I was listening to an audio book recently, and they talk about being able to step out of one space into another space, and why people wait until they hit the brick wall before they actually do it. And it is that vulnerability. It's not being able to step into that by choice and say, I absolutely don't know. And I'm okay that I'm no longer an expert in this field. I'm very okay as a starting position, and being able to validate the people you're around and not have that expectation of yourself.
Yeah.
So, so, and that is a male and a female thing too. And if I was to be brutally honest, because I experienced it, seen it, and still see it often, questioning why that is such a hard thing to do, I would say that would be harder for a male to be able to do than necessarily a female. I think females experienced firsts at everything and have to step into the new and the unknown more often than what males do if they are on that. I've been in this for a lifetime. This is where I started and I'm still in the same industry doing the same thing. They maintain that level of experience and being an expert in their field for a lot longer period of time, that to get out of that and be in the, I'm no longer the expert, I'm at ground zero here, would be very, very challenging.
Yeah, it would be exposing. It would feel quite unsafe there, and I think it pushes all our there's human needs here, like safety as well as significance, that get pushed when you step out of a space where you're an expert. You're no longer significant in this field. You're a small fish in a big pond, and that's never going to be comfortable for anyone. But I think culturally, what's expected of men as they were growing up, especially a couple of generations ago, and even the most recent generation in the 20th century, there was that expectation that they couldn't lose face. And that's a disadvantage here, because one of the flip sides in being able to have recent researchers like Brené Brown talk about shame, talk about the fact that vulnerability is seen as something that you want to avoid at all costs because of the discomfort and the exposure that you suffer. It's actually probably one of the most courageous things that you can do, and opens up a new set of opportunities for you that are a lot more honest and that are a lot more empowering.
Absolutely. And it sets the expectation on the other side with the people that you're around. If they know, because you've just said, I don't know anything about this. This is why I'm ringing you. It's why I'm ringing the experts. There's that instant, oh, okay, well, then this is what I will deliver to you. I will give you what you need from a standing start, instead of not being okay with that and going into a conversation and not letting them know, and then ending up in a situation where they're talking a language that you don't understand. They're giving you information that you're not ready to receive yet, and wondering why it's so hard, because none of this is hard. There are technicalities, and there are regulations and restrictions and everything else that we deal with, but none of it's hard when you're okay with a starting position and to be able to grow through an industry and through experiences, and preference to feeling as though you have to know everything from day one.
I can tell you a very funny story about that. Exactly.
Please do. Go on.
So while I was still living in London, I was learning Mandarin, and I was very proud of the fact that I was really taking it on board and learning phrases very quickly, etc. So in order to test my skills, they suggested that you go, obviously in London, there's a fantastic Chinatown community. So I went there to a restaurant, and I confidently asked the lady, in really, what I really worked on my accent, right? I asked her very confidently where the bathrooms were. And I was very proud of myself, and she told me the answer. And then I came to sit down back at the table, and everyone asked me, so what did you say? And I said, well, I worked so hard at knowing the question that I couldn't understand the answer. So I need to go and ask another person in the restaurant where to find the bathrooms in English, so I could understand the answer to find the bathroom.
I love it.
There's a cost to going in assuming that you don't want to show how much you don't know. It was a real cost.
Too funny though, isn't it? But it's exactly how it works, isn't it? It's exactly how it works. And I think if everyone's really honest with themselves, we've all been there, we've all done it. Oh no, if I just go in and I just do it, or I just say I'll be fine, I don't have to admit that I don't know anything. And it's really setting us up for failure. And it takes the enjoyment out of growing into something, out of learning something, being a part of new change, and the reason why you made the choice.
Absolutely.
Why you made the choice. And I know you have an incredible story around why you chose to be in property. And I also know that your journey has been mind-blowing as far as what you guys have been able to achieve as a family. So from a female's perspective here, because again, it was International Women's Day yesterday, which I'm still waiting to see whether that International Men's Day kicks in, because we'll touch on that one as well.
Yeah.
But very much looking at how women fit in to property, right? You decided long ago there was a reason why you were going to do this. What do you mind sharing that with us?
It's an interesting story because look, when my husband and I first got into property, my husband was working FIFO. He was a real expert in his field, and he was seen as a unique problem solver, which meant that not only were the sites that he was working on gradually more and more toxic and challenging for him, but it meant that he was making more and more money, which is excellent. So we had a really big property portfolio at that stage. He just, had the advantage of great serviceability and great equity. So he just bought up properties, but following the advice that he had from his tax accountant, as well as the fact that he had a wealth advisor at that time, he was also severely negatively geared, which meant that he was trapped. Now, it was okay while we were married and we didn't have a child, because we were both very independent people. We liked having our solitude, but we liked being together too. When my son was born, things changed. Now, James saw my son Xander when things were lining up and when construction was going well, because these were construction rosters. So on a good run, we saw each other for 4 days of every month. Now, James was traveling from Western Australia. So part of those 4 days was travel time to the Sunshine Coast. So it meant that he had time to basically unpack his bags, do some laundry, spend a day with us before he was already in that mental mode where he needed to go back. It wasn't a life. He wasn't enjoying it. He knew that he was missing out. My son was missing out as well. And I was feeling the overall strain. So the thing that was interesting is my purpose was to bring my husband home. And my husband said, but that's not enough of a purpose for you because you're doing it for someone else. And he kept on challenging and said to me, that's not your purpose. That's not your purpose. Ultimately, one of the biggest things that I realized during my journey, and he was right, it was part of the reason. It was definitely a big why for me. But only in retrospect that I realized that the whole of the property development journey for me was a hero's journey, where I developed that knowledge that more important than independence is interdependence. It's coming out of the space where I didn't have to be an expert anymore in what I did, because I realized the value in creating a team of experts around me. So for me, the why was ultimately to feel safer, feel more supported, feel like more was possible, because my risk profile when I started was very, very low. Being analytical, you're almost in a space where you need to receive the information first to make a decision on it, right? But being entrepreneurial like you are, Mel, you are willing to actually just forge ahead regardless of not having all the information, trusting that you have the resources in place to assist you no matter what. That was the purpose that I knew that I needed to go for, because I wanted to be in that same space, to have that safety net in being resourceful in myself. That was my why.
Isn't it? And I've always loved your story, because when we start looking at women and men, the fact that that starting position for you was, I want my husband back home. I want him to be a part of a family. I want him to see his son growing up. We want him here, and that this is no life. And yet you had the challenge of the negatively geared portfolio. And that makes a tougher choice because we've got a big paycheck coming in over here. And to let go of that, and then how do we support what we've created on this side? And unfortunately, there's still, in this day and age, advice being given that leads people into negatively geared. We've been there. We went through that years ago, but it still happens. So to have that awareness that there's other choices, there's other ways of doing things, and you can have everything you want. It doesn't have to be a one way or another. Is an incredible space to play in.
Absolutely.
There's no resistance there from James. James, though, was there? This was no, I'm the man of the house and I must provide and I must do this and I'm very significant in my role. There was none of that with James.
Oh no, but he's a remarkable person in his own right. I think when I had the real privilege of meeting James's first boss, And in fact, James's first boss ended up being a lifelong friend. So we go scuba diving regularly. And this is like almost 30 years later, right? And he told me a story about my husband, which was that it was a site out in Western Australia that they were working on. And James arrived on site. He had freshly graduated, and Darren, who was his boss, went to pick him up at the airport to bring him back to site. And on the long drive, he was asking him questions. So, what do you know about engineering? And Darren had been really experienced. He'd been a supervisor for many years. So he'd seen a lot of these graduates come and go, right? But he said what made James really distinctive was that when he sat down in the car and Darren asked him a question, so what do you know about engineering? And James very honestly said to him, it's safe. And I think it's really appropriate that I absolutely know nothing at this stage, so that I can learn everything that's relevant right now.
Yeah, love it.
And that's his hallmark, and that's what he brings. And and fantastically, I learned a lot from that coming forward. And that's what allowed me to let go, to be able to make that very vulnerable first call to that commercial real estate agent and say, actually, I don't know anything, but I'm calling you because I can see from the data that I've got that you are an expert in this field.
And you know what? How much information did you get from that call?
Man, gold. But what I will say as well is that you've got to be careful. One of the biggest elements that I teach my students and my clients is discernment. So make sure you do your research that the person you are phoning is an expert. Otherwise, they'll know that you're just blowing hot air up there. Yeah, you've got to really be discerning in who you're speaking to.
I've always said, be the 2-year-old. Have curiosity. Want to understand things from a different perspective. Ask questions. So from a female's perspective and of being a stay-at-home mum is what the position is, learn from your 2-year-old. Right? And ask consistently. Be okay to ask those questions. And you look at kids that, there's no ego involved. There's nothing involved at that level. They haven't been tarnished for long enough yet to not be prepared to ask a question and just be okay with that. And I think that is such a paramount thing when you're coming into anything that's new, but definitely into this industry, that you've got to be very open to not knowing anything. It changes consistently anyway. Like it's such a dynamic industry with the amount of product that's being created and change that's required. We can't come in at a starting position thinking we know everything, let alone stay with that mentality either. So
I think it's dangerous. I think we're going to be left behind if we do that. And not only that, we're going to isolate a lot of people who do know.
Oh, sure. And again, you look at generations coming in. I mean, I love seeing the younger generations coming in and the ideas that they have, especially when we look at housing.
Yeah.
And going, hey, these are the guys that are buying it. They're the ones that are living in it. They're going to build for the following generations. Let's give some consideration to the things that they see differently to us, because how we've grown up, what we've lived in, and what we create is vastly different to how they see things. And from a cultural perspective, from a environmental perspective, but definitely when we're looking at size.
Yeah.
And I think to be able to give consideration to those generations is pretty incredible. It's very interesting to see. And if you're not open to difference or new information, you miss all of that.
You do. And then there's always, I think with that, the cost, as we highlighted, is we're going to isolate the people but then you can't adapt. And of course, the real hallmark of intelligence is being able to adapt to a changing environment. We all get comfortable knowing what we know, but unless that growth mindset exists where you recognize that what you know is not going to be relevant in all situations, especially as time goes on, you're not going to have that capacity to learn. So I think that ultimately one of the biggest strengths and the biggest values that I would suggest we need to adopt is the fact that we need to be continual lifelong learners, and absolutely assume that what we know now is not going to be relevant in tomorrow or the next day.
No, we're a throwaway society anyway. Like we're really real about it. It is what it is. We're very dynamic and very much into change. We're accepting of it, and I think a lot of good can come off that. Curiosity is a superpower.
It is, and I'd never seen it until then. But it's now something that I absolutely teach my children. Remember, we were always taught curiosity kills the cat.
Absolutely,
and
yes.
I think we need to reverse that. I really do think it is a superpower.
Totally. Curiosity is an incredible superpower. You go back to the day of, will you be quiet? Stop asking questions. Right? That sticks. So I think people have got to let go of that and be very okay to ask questions, to want to know something else, and then the other side of that is being okay to receive that information as well.
Yes, and that can be challenging.
Oh, yes, it can. And knowing what to do with it, though. So we don't just want to, like you said, receive garbage.
Yeah.
We want to be able to decipher what it is that's being given to us, and is it serving us or is it not? And then definitely receiving what is beneficial, especially when it's coming from the experts that you've researched.
Yes.
So let's talk growth mindset, because we've got females coming into the industry now that have been stay-at-home mums, and we're not talking any age group here. Maybe they've stayed home and looked after their family has left home, and they're going, what do I do now? And I've stumbled across this community and an industry that I could do something with. And I've decided to make a start. I've decided to step into this, and I'm okay with that. And I'm okay to ask questions and be curious. I'm very okay with that. But how do I now go from step to step to step and grow through this, and preference to having that all or nothing expectation where I've stepped into it today, I've done some learning, and I expect that tomorrow, not only am I going to be the expert, I'm going to have an overnight portfolio and I'm done. How do we actually segment that and stage it better that it's sustainable?
It's something that I've really taken on board and developed almost what I call the sustainable success model for my students. And I'm now in a really fantastic position where I'm able to teach that sustainable success model to the students in I Love Real Estate and at the platinum level specifically. The sustainable success model is divided into 4 categories, but each category is almost like an extension or a requirement for the next one. So it's almost a continuum. So the whole process is that you've got to keep on moving from segment to segment. The most empowering thing in getting started, in overcoming inertia and that fear and uncertainty between knowing what to do and actually doing it, is feeling empowered to do that. And one of the most, I think, powerful questions that I teach all my students to ask, whether they're male or female, but specifically we're talking about those females who are coming out of a situation where they've been out of the workforce for a long time, is what resources do I need right now in order to do this? And that's where the sustainable success model comes up, because the person is then able to use the sustainable success model to pick out what resources they need and what they need to do next, and they just follow the process from there. So I'll give you a very quick intro into it, where the first box is the box where you have to know your purpose, know your why. Start with why, as Simon Sinek says.
Yes.
And that is a very powerful book to read. Start with your why. Have that there to be your fuel to drive you forward to taking the first action. Now, if you don't know what your first action needs to be, then a checklist is helpful, and that's where your knowledge comes in. But even if you have the knowledge, but you haven't been able to prioritize that knowledge into creating a checklist or a process for yourself, then you've got to move into the next box where you talk to someone who does know. That's a very big one for me. And that's where the collaborative element is. So when you do that, you get the feedback that you want, and you use that feedback to take the next action. And that next action then is used to design the process with the help of others that forms your checklist. And always that checklist involves using not only your own resources, but the resources of others to keep on growing. So I don't have a slide prepared to be able to give you a visual of what this is, but you can see that the 4 boxes are action, organization or systems,
Yes.
people, your team.
Mm-hmm.
And then that 4th box is the feedback. It's the purpose. It's the refinement box, where you then take all this information, you reflect on it, and then you take more refined action the next time. And that action is used to create, refine, and to improve your system. And that system then is used to support the people who are working with you. That then also elevates your purpose, and so on and so forth. And you can see that it becomes a spiral of evolution. So the sustainable success model is how I would help anyone from a standing start. Just know that as long as they're stepping outside of one box into the other and trying to always take action that's used to create a system for themselves, and the system is backed up by people and experts, you'll always get information and receive the information to be able to refine the process and refine your actions, et cetera, and so on.
I love it. I absolutely love it. The simplicity behind it, and yet quite challenging on a few levels for people
Yeah.
to get
So
around it, having given it consideration. But it touches on the most important things, doesn't it? Why?
why?
Why
Starts
being,
with why.
yeah,
Why am I doing this? And then that gives you the fuel to get over the inertia to take the first action. And even if the first action is to ask more questions,
that's
you're on
fine.
your way.
Absolutely. If that's what it is, that's what it is. That's understanding that. I want to go back to the why for a second, because that is very important. And we will look at this constantly. And I've said to many students, your why changes.
Mm.
Of course it will. As you experience new things, you give deeper thought to what's happening, what's going on, what you want to achieve, what it means to you. But irrelevant to what it is, it's what it is. To start without that, you've really got nothing to leverage yourself with, to drive yourself forward, to motivate you to gain that momentum to take the next step.
Absolutely. And I think with my experience with not only my own life, but also what I've seen happen in all my students and clients, is that the why is made up of two parts.
Mm-hmm.
There is the why that is there to get away from something that you don't want, which is, for instance, a negatively geared property and the fact that my husband's working away. So there was a drive to fill a need.
Yes.
But that is just, when you fulfill that, you get back to baseline.
Yeah.
So an equally important part of the why needs to be the inspiration for what comes next. And for some of us, we're not able to access that.
It's true.
Because I believe that to really have sustainable momentum to reach our goals, we need a mixture of the drive, the motivation, which moves us forward out of a situation we don't want anymore.
Yeah.
So that's an away from motivation. But there's also going to be something pulling us, a vision of how life can be,
Absolutely.
the inspiration, the dream. So I coach my students, if they're not able to access that, I always ask them, so what would happen once you have positive cash flow? What will that enable you to do? Oh, it will give me quality time. So what's the purpose of having the quality time? Family. So what do you imagine doing with your family? Oh, I can see us going away on holiday, having experiences, etc., etc. Can you see there's inspiration there?
And you know what, isn't it? I guess it not so much disappointing, but quite concerning that people don't do that on a daily, even a weekly, allow themselves to go into that space. Why is it we've created a way of being that does not support those desires, that being okay to have, to want, to be worthy of that kind of lifestyle, or that much money to contribute back to make a difference, to create experiences, to have great family time. We don't spend enough time in that space actually feeling it, visualizing it, allowing it to feel real, allowing it to feel attainable.
Past experiences have a lot to do with it. And I think that I know that, it's just amazing. The more people I deal with, the more I realize that people have real stories to tell. And some of these stories are really challenging stories in their own right. And these people are survivors and heroes. But there are certain instances, depending on the circumstances that they are currently in or have just come out of, which will dictate that. And when there is a significant need to fill, it's very hard to see beyond that. It's so hard to see that beyond that. So what I teach, and I'll give you an example of people in this situation, people who've been separated, so they've undergone or they've gone through divorce recently, or they are grieving because they've lost a loved one. And I've got a couple of students in these types of situations. And what I tell them is, don't worry so much of the vision or what can be, because they can't imagine it. They are still suffering loss. What I say to them is, you hold on to every bit in your life right now that's good, that you're grateful for, and then you just make a bigger and bigger pile of those things. So even if they don't have that inspiration pulling them forward, what they at least have is the drive, but they've also, they're storing up, they're banking up everything that they're grateful for. And that then becomes, I want more of that.
Yes.
And that becomes a vision. It's more accessible. And I think it's more nurturing where they are, because it gives them relief then too.
And there's a lot of respect needs to come for those situations as well.
Absolutely.
People need to be able to deal with them, understand them. And
it takes as long as it takes to get out of those situations, doesn't it? There's no timeline.
It's an individual thing too.
Yeah.
It really is an individual thing. I think if people have the tools and the space to be able to deal with that, they can have anything they want.
Yeah, so I think that's probably one of the biggest things that I'm really grateful for. I mean, the property investment side of it, you know, James and I in the years that we were really focused on replacing our income, we managed to do so in 2 years. We had a lot of resources at our disposal when we started, so we had an advantage there. But we were really discerning in what we chose, and we really gave it our full focus. The biggest thing that came out of that for me was that the skills that I needed to develop as a person, the interpersonal skills that I needed to develop as a person, really became my passion. And now that all our needs are fulfilled, the inspiration that I keep on moving towards, even after all my needs are fulfilled, is that it's the elevation of self, but having a ripple effect outwards, which lifts everybody who is ready to learn and is around me. And I'm trying to now extend my influence to get to take as many people on that journey as possible, because regardless of what their real estate goals are,
Yeah.
if on the way to achieving their goal, they become a more effective, happier,
Oh, for sure.
successful person who's having a positive effect on those around them, then that's the goal.
Absolutely. And I think a little bit of reality there too, Nicole. Some people that come into the industry, it's a vehicle for them. It's a means to an end. And that's totally okay if that's what it is. And if it allows them to find that greater purpose, that what they want to do, live for, and fill the rest of their days with, that's a great thing. For others, they come in, they immerse into the industry, they do incredible things and all of that. And there's nothing wrong with that either. There's no one way or another. I say it's an incredible industry. It offers so much. It gives you so many choices. It allows you to play on so many levels. So a lot of joy comes off the back of it, but it doesn't have to be all or nothing. If it just serves that purpose of a means to an end, of replacing an income, of bringing a husband home, of anything that fills that need in your life, well, then that's perfectly okay as well. And it does it so well with a lot of resources around you and a lot of support as well. So for women in an industry, I sincerely say, working with a lot of them on a lot of levels, this is an industry that allows you to be able to be you, to overlay your creativity, your innate values relevant to what they are, create great things, have impact, right? To be able to make change, whatever role it is you want to play, the opportunity is there. You've just got to be okay with your starting position.
Yes.
Tap into the resources that are available.
Yes.
Because there are plenty of them.
Yep.
Ask great questions, lots and lots of them. Be the 2-year-old. Have curiosity as a superpower.
Be prepared to let go of being right. Yes. Or knowing.
Absolutely. And yeah, be prepared to learn and really be okay with that and what you can do with that new knowledge, that new information moving forward, and have an impact.
Absolutely.
Because there's a lot of impact you can have in this industry. There really is. And that's not just for women. Yes, the conversation's been around women today, but that's what men and women alike. And I see men doing great things in this industry too, and changing the position that they came in as into different roles and overlaying skill sets that they never knew that they had innately as well. So it's never a one-sided game. The space, the industry, very collaborative space if you want it to be, and if you allow yourself to play at that level, incredible things can be done.
Yeah, I think the collaboration has so many benefits for us. And of course, remember, we being human beings, we are designed to collaborate. That's why communication is super important. So I think that this space, because there's just so many levels of expertise required, and just the process of property development is a creative process.
It is.
It's building something out of nothing. There's a lot of energy around that. That's really inspirational. So anyone who's involved in it, even the guys who do the analysis on the feasibilities.
There is. Absolutely.
It's a very creative process, and I particularly love it because you've got that super imaginative element of the design, but it's married in with the real structure and analysis of the feasibility, making it sure it's standing up at the end of the day, but it's doing so in a way that meets the budget and makes profit. Can you see that there's restrictions to that creativity, which can really push our innovation? A space like that is so important for us. And if we are lucky enough to have stumbled onto it, just keep at it, because the skills that we develop is not going to only be good in that particular industry, but I think we take through a whole lot of problem solving skills and a way of thinking and being that's going to solve world problems.
I've got to agree with that, Nicole. And we say, be very okay with time. Be very okay with it. There are steps that you move through in the industry, and whether it be from your first very small renovation or 1 into 2 subdivision or whatever your very first small deal is, up into larger deals, there is a process. Yes, there are systems. There's a lot of flexibility. There's a lot of creativity that goes on. There's an amazing space you can play in. But be okay that it doesn't always happen overnight, because generally there's something that we haven't learned yet. Or there's a piece of information that we don't have yet.
Yeah.
So we don't want to be coming in being that square peg in a round hole and just forcing everything to happen. So we want to be able to come in with eyes wide open and create things, not just bulldoze and force a way through. And again, that comes with asking great questions and wanting to work as a team, because it's never, in all of the students I've had, people I've worked with, teams I've had, projects we've done, I have never, ever, ever seen a project happen with one person alone. This is a team game. Totally. And the bigger it gets, the bigger the deals, the bigger the team, the more people that you're working with, the more creativity, the more collaboration.
Management of resources as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. But from deal one, it's still a team game.
Totally.
It's a people game. It's not an individual game. So it doesn't matter how much resistance you have. This is not a field you can play in if you want to play as an individual.
Agreed. Agreed. Yeah. So with all of that you've just said there, which is absolutely true, one of the biggest things that I've done within I Love Real Estate is bring that more to the fore. So I've developed an initiative which is free to only the students at the moment in I Love Real Estate, which is Money Mind Mastery. But what it does is it starts with purpose. It starts with a why, and it allows you to see what holds you back from actually attaining your goals, getting them out of the way. But then out of that, I've created a program that's specifically for those who want to get to peak performance. So we're talking about interpersonal skills like effective communication, dispute resolution. We also cover off on the things that are most likely going to hold us back, how to overcome them, and really refine your inherent values. Be able to name the values, know in what order they are happening for yourself so that you can use them as the fuel to continue. And I do that within the sustainable success model. And I give the students the framework to really be able to move to the next level, whatever it looks like from them. So wherever they're starting, where they're still trying to meet their needs, as I said before, where they're grieving a loss, it allows them to move forward and take action regardless of the way they're feeling. But for those who already have their needs fulfilled, who are looking to elevate themselves and take on bigger deals or do more things, it gives them the skills to be able to do so in a way that really marries up not only success, but their health, but their well-being, prioritizes their relationships, prioritizes their happiness on the journey. So if you are interested in finding out more, it's a 12-week program, and I think it's 2.5 hours a week that we spend together, and all the sessions are recorded. I'm currently in the middle of one of these sessions right now with existing students, but there's one coming up in August, and I've decided to open that up to everyone. So not just the students in I Love Real Estate. The program itself is going to be marketed at $3,000. I am offering a special of $2,499 to anyone who wants to join over those 12 weeks. You get all the workbooks, you get all the recordings to go back over, you get to interact with the community. There are limited spaces because, as you can imagine, I can't have too many people doing this because there's got to be a lot of interaction in the group, and I prize that interaction because it lets me see how people are developing along the way. But if you are interested, there is a waiting list for the one coming up in August. And the waiting list to subscribe to that, it's just I think it's a $99 fee. So if you are interested, I know that Mel's probably going to send out an email to you, and we can put up a link in the chat box right now if you're interested in knowing more, and I'll be able to send you the timelines, et cetera, et cetera.
So we'll make sure that everyone gets that information. Yeah. I just want to validate you on that, Nicole. I really do, because I have students that have worked with you. I have spoken to a lot of people that have attended your events. Incredible what you do in that space and the impact that it has on people. The change that I see is just incredible. So well done to you. Now, absolutely, you've definitely earned that. You do incredible things and you give it your all. It is heart and soul, which is what we want to be living. You know, we want to be living that purpose, that heart and soul way of being. And you do that so incredibly well in what you deliver and the impact that you have on other people's lives. So I would absolutely recommend it to anyone to attend if you're looking for any kind of change. Forget about just property, but any kind of change in your life at all. It's definitely worth going through. And I can tell you $3,000 is nothing for what you get at the other end, the impact it has and what it actually allows you to be able to do moving forward. And I know that there's been a lot of support for you, for what you do, for what you deliver, and a lot of great comments coming from so many people I've spoken to about it and what I've seen personally. So
thank you, Mel. That means a lot coming from you, because you've been a real inspiration to me over my journey. I think one of the biggest things was trying to lift my risk profile to have more of that entrepreneurial and visionary spirit that you have. So I want to acknowledge you there. So thank you for your support in this too.
Oh, you are more than welcome. I said, you've earned it. You absolutely have earned it. And there's nothing better than seeing someone play in the space that they love, that is really important to them, because the impact it has and the difference it makes at the other end is so profound. It really, really is. So it's so exciting to see. It's so exciting to see you doing what you're doing, because you do it so well.
It's my passion, seriously.
It is. And, you know, we talk about the energy around things. To be around you is a great energy to be in. So, and only good comes from that. You know, only good.
My dear, that's awesome. Thank
you.
So
amazing. One other direction for you guys is we've been talking about people and the right team. So I want you to jump on, and I know you'll get it in the email, jump onto the platform, jump onto the website, follow the links that will come out in the email that you get to the platform we've created. It's a collaborative space. It is about working together. It's about being able to find the resources that you need, and predominantly in the property space, yes. And whether you're at a starting position or you're in the middle of a deal and you're looking for a new engineer or a surveyor or a planner or something's gone wrong, this is an environment that brings the property industry together. It allows us to work as a team, because we are all about team. We are all about working as people, and the right people too. So I want you to check it out. Make sure you sign up for it. It's free to sign up. Have a play around. You will definitely get an email from my team, and you'll definitely get someone that will touch base with you and be able to support you through understanding what the platform can do for you, how you can progress through it, and how you can use it to your absolute benefit to make sure that it supports you and propels you through your property journey. So Nicole, wow, that hour went absolutely nowhere, because
We've still got lots to talk about.
So long, there is so much. And look, I do thank you. I thank you so much for taking some time out of your very busy day to share with us, and definitely share your experiences, your expertise and thoughts with our audience. It means a lot to me. So a lot of gratitude to you, Madea. Thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you.
And I know I'm going to see you very soon. I'm going to see you up on the Sunshine Coast very soon, which is very exciting.
Look forward to it, Mel. We are definitely going to have a margarita sometime that weekend, aren't we?
Definitely. Definitely on the cards. Definitely.
Look forward to it. Thank you, everybody, for your kind attention. Thank you.
And thanks, Nicole. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in, for joining us. And I will definitely see you again very shortly.